Welcome back to the Wednesday Hump Day edition of Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Disembodied Beard, John, and Polly. Good morning. Hannah and Luca Day, indeed. I guess I could call out Luca, but he's not really here. He's kind of in the ether, off on his own channel, you know. And we don't really want to invoke him, do we? Can be dicey. Anyway, hi everybody. Hi. Yes, happy Wednesday. Tomorrow Overwatch starts, which means I have to get all my work done today. Overwatch tournament. Me and my geekdom. Ultimate nerd here. Alright, now I need to get some of this crap out of my way. Dear me. I'm just going to put these back real quick. Clean up my area before I mess up my area, if you know what I mean. Hi there, Kiki. Oh, good morning. Do you want to say hello to the stream this morning or no? Are you just here to say hello to Mom? Yeah? No Kiki visited, no early Kiki? You can come up if you want. Yeah, you can come. Yeah. She's like thinking about it. She's thinking about it. But she's like, oh, I don't know if I want to jump up now. Are you all full after breakfast? You're like, nope. Nope, I'm going to nope out of that, Mama. I'm going to nope out. Good girl. Yeah, you want to come out? No? Okay, go settle. Good girl. Work. Yep, she doesn't want to come up. She's just visiting us. You can see her there receding in the background. I definitely don't need this flannel this morning, though. Not in the back of the house. We definitely have temperature variances at our house. I'm sure everybody probably has that. Alrighty, I'm gonna put that back. Lovely. Oh, and this can go away too. I have all these paints cluttering up my work surface. It can really make a difference in your mental. So I've learned that over the years. I need to have a clear deck, or as close to it as I can get, before I start. So I'm gonna change the skin tone. Seeing Kiki nose is better than not seeing anything of Kiki. Yes. Oh, I was going to remind you because I had to blow my nose before I even got on stream. Yeah, Quindy, I'm with you there. Also here is like the barometric pressure is changing because rain is supposed to come through soon. I think that's what's got that always gets my sinuses all excited. So we're going to do an experiment today because if I decided the skin tone is too monochrome, too flat, I don't like it. I want something more complicated. And it's also just way too purple. So, I am departing from my initial reference, although I'm still going to do the blue hair. That's the plan. We'll see if that continues to work, but we're going to do some weird stuff here. We're actually going to mix yellow into our purple and see what happens. And I may highlight with Youthful Flesh here. Or I think it's Peachy Flesh now. It's Peachy Flesh. Sorry, I may highlight with Peachy Flesh. So I mentioned that last time that I was kind of disgruntled about this skin tone, and I might highlight it with a real, more human skin tone. But I realized that if I can mute it out with a little bit of yellow, I might like it better, and that might be a better basis for highlighting with this. So the question here is Wild Violet reddish enough for this to work? Oh yeah, I feel like Quindy. When you have a really red purple, like runic purple, it works great. It turns it into an orangey brown. It'll like essentially move the purple toward a skin tone if you just add white, after you add the yellow. But Wild Violet's a little more blue than runic. So if I grab runic purple, if I assume I have my runic purple over here somewhere. I don't know if I do. Did I remove it? Did I kick it to the curb? Is this it? Yeah. So runic purple, you can see, is both lighter and redder than red violet. It's the blue in the Wild Violet that can get us in trouble. So it may not work. I may need to use the Wild Violet for shading and use runic purple with this plan instead. But we're going to try it. We're going to kind of see what we get. I've mixed runic purple with candlelight before. It gives you kind of a muted orange brown that's kind of pretty, actually. I have a backup plan, so I can just switch to the runic purple. But I'm very curious to see if Wild Violet will work. Wild Violet is really on the edge of going toward a blue-purple, but it's still a bit reddish, so I'm just curious. So we're going to do a mixing. Mixing, guys. We're going to remove the mini and put our palette down here and do a little mixing thing. So normally when you mix complementary colors together, you're able to mute the color out, so make it further from bright, further from saturated. And you're able to do so without losing a lot of your chroma, your intensity. So, like, if you added gray to the purple, you could also mute it out, but you would lose a lot of that purple color. It would just kind of fade. It would fade a lot faster, whereas adding the complement lets you mute the color without losing all of your intensity. Same thing with black. I always tell you how black kills a color. Well, that's what the gray is doing, because the gray is part black. So yeah. So when you want a softer, misty looking color, I'm going to do 3 drops of this. Then that's a great option, right? If you want that soft mistiness, I used that a long time ago. We were painting the koala bear for the Australian fundraiser. And I mixed her blue with, I think, cloudy gray to get a softer blue, and it worked great. But yeah, it doesn't work for everything. And that's not really the feel that I want here. I want to maintain some of my color intensity. I don't want to go all grayed out. Otherwise, we're going to get to the point we are at with Mr. Elquin, who, you know, is really, really muted, and I'm very challenged to find colors to go with him. So we're going to put 1 drop of Candlelight in here. Okay, if I use a pokey tool, we're going to put 1 drop of Candlelight in here. And we're going to kind of judge the results. Not silently judge. We're going to just judge them. Because we're just like that today. There we go. Bloop. All right. We're crossing the streams. Let's see what happens. I'm going to put 1 drop of water in there. Yeah, it's spring today. It is the first day of spring. Therefore, it's snowing. Of course it is. It would be in Wisconsin, too. Well, okay, not always. It would be crappy in Wisconsin, however. I just remember, like, waiting endlessly one year for the trees to actually get buds and actually get leaves. Like, if to me it is not spring until the leaves start popping out. Because Wisconsin wanted to just say, oh, it's spring, but it's cold and awful, and the leaves are staying in, and I just was not into that. So you can see that that gives us more of a brown purple. That's a little bit too far compared to what I wanted. So I'm going to put another drop of Wild Violet in there. But what that tells me is we might be okay. It did gray out a little bit more than I wanted it to. Look at a big difference there. Wow. Okay, so that slides us a little bit back. I want to do another one. And the yellow is just impacting the purple a lot, so let's do another one. Now we're at 5 drops to 1. And now I want to add a little bit of probably white. When you're already mixing colors that are pretty complicated, don't use an off-white to mix, to lighten them. Use a pure white. If you use anything else, if I used Assyrian sand here, I'd be tossing more yellow and other stuff into the mix. When you're already kind of like carefully mixing 2 colors together and getting, like, you know, a complicated result, the last thing you want to do is use something other than pure white. All right, that's getting a little better. It's still a bit more muted than I want. I think part of that is that the blue is coming in there. Let's do a comparison with Runic and see what we're at. Because Runic is more red, remember, it has less blue. My prediction would be that it would be slightly less muted out when I use this technique. All right, Runic, you gonna come out? Yeah. Okay, so same amount of drops as the Wild Violet. Same amount of yellow. Same amount of water. Yeah. Much more intense. Now I'm going to add that 1 drop of white so that we can compare directly. Look at how punchy and warm that went. But it's much less faded, you see what I mean? Here, let's add the white. Right, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense, Kerniko. So you can see the big difference here. You can see how much more blue that is. And this is more saturated unless this looks more gray. You see that? So that's the difference here between these two purples. And it's funny because when you look at them in the bottle, you might say, oh, those are too close. You know, I don't need both of those. But as you can see, if you are mixing, it is a very, very different story. You can get a very different result between those two purples. So Wild Violet and Runic Purple. I made Wild Violet because I thought we needed a purple that was around that same value, but more cool. And it is good for different things. So I am going to mix up just some straight Wild Violet, which was our starting skin tone. And I'm going to work with the skin and see, using this for the shadow instead of the base. Sit with it. Yep. Meditation. It's miniature meditation. Just let me be your distraction, and just, you know, sit with the mini. Sit with the mini. Put some colors on it. Paint in sections if you have to. I still maintain that painting in sections like gives you an easy win, because at least you can finish one small part of the model, and it feels like you actually accomplished something. I'm hopefully finishing my PDF today on different ways to start a model, and we'll talk about that. There are disadvantages too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with these guys together, because this one's a little bit too muted for me. I'm going to see what I can do. Let's actually do just a quick mix to trial this. Hey, Kerniko, thank you for the resub. You know we love you. Happy Spring, Not Spring Day. It's so true. So let's do a quick mix and see. These mix pretty harmoniously. The middle color's okay. So I think these are going to be all right. We'll see what we can do. I'm gonna hit her face and her chest with this. It's going to change everything, but I think I'm going to like the result a little better. And then I can continue, and then the goal is to continue adding yellow and create an actual skin tone for the highlights. Something that's more human-y. Something that's very like, the effect should be, like I was kind of channeling World of Warcraft Night Elves on this. So the effect at the end should be something akin to that, and they do, like, some of the Night Elf models do, the options do have, yeah, see, this is very different. So I'm going to paint over this. Gonna leave the shadows, gonna get in focus, and then get close. Alright, so very different. If you had technology earlier. But yes, but you live in the wilds of Scotland. It's okay. We understand. Now if I leave some of that base Wild Violet, we can kind of start to see how those shadows will look. See? That looks pretty nice. So I'm actually pretty happy with the change here. And it's interesting when you put this pink purple right next to the Wild Violet, it actually looks like a kind of a skin tone, doesn't it? Like it already looks like more of what we would consider a natural skin tone. I like this effect a lot. So we're going to keep with this. And I think I'm going to move my camera up because since this model is big, I want to hold it in a different position. So I think I'm going to be right here-ish. Yeah, I think right there. Right, and that's what you're looking for in our, I think that's what I was looking for. I wasn't happy with the purple. It was so flat. And this, because I'm mixing now. This is the reason you learn to mix colors, folks. If you're not mixing colors, you're going to get some pretty flat results, color speaking. I mean, they'll be predictable, and it'll be safe, right? Safe and predictable. But it won't give you any really, really cool effects. When you start mixing, and you start playing with how colors interact with each other, that's when you can really do some cool things. And yeah, sure, you're going to, like, you know, make some mistakes and do some terrible mixes on your way to learning. But that's okay. But see, like, isn't this cool? This looks neat. I like this. This is making me like the model about 50 times better. I did not like the model when I put it down last week. There. Yeah, all right. So let's keep going on this. Let's back up a little bit so I can stay on camera a little bit better. And continue going. So I'm going to be doubling down on my Wild Violet in the shadows, bringing it up with this mixture of Runic Purple and Candlelight Yellow. So I'm having to deal with a very interesting, like, mental block lately. I've been reading a lot of books on nutrition and weightlifting and absorbing the contents as I do. And it's really challenging to me when I've realized in the last couple days that I don't have to cut calories. In fact, I shouldn't cut calories. And I don't have to cut in short, I don't have to cut calories to lose weight. Considering I've been cutting calories for my entire life, this is pretty big to try to wrestle past, guys. And if I was still obese, it would not be like, that's not true. Like, to get to my current weight with keto, I did eat less. But now that I am lifting specifically, I actually don't, like, I had tried to go down to like 1,600 calories or 1,500 calories, and I was terribly hungry and irritable and awful and tired. So I started adding calories back in, just a little bit at a time. Nobody likes their model with only a base coat. I don't know, sometimes I do. Yeah, predictable and safe. Yes, reject predictable and safe. Reject it. Yeah, there is a thing of not liking a color placement, yeah. But yeah, so it's been weird to realize, like, I've been doing this odd thing where I, like, eat a little bit more every day to see the break point where I'm not hungry at night anymore. That's the break point I'm looking for. There we go. Got that in. Now I'll get the highlights, and we'll see how this looks, and we'll get the shoulders. I think this is going to be good. Thin paint, Valthorn. Thin paint. Thin paint. Like so. You still want to have coverage. I'm working around this consistency right here. So it's not a perfect coverage, and it takes a couple coats. But if you have this paint consistency, it will go on smoothly in a couple coats. And the key here is when you drag your brush through the paint, does it just close right back up like that? See how it closes right back up? It doesn't leave a furrow, right? When you've got that consistency, here, this was a little thicker, let's see. Yep. See how it, like, I pull the brush through it, but it closes right back up? That's what you want, because that means the paint is self-leveling on the model. And when the paint is self-leveling on the model, you're going to get that smooth base coat. 2 coats, sure. Like, you can still see some of the base model prime through this, but that's the key. It's thinning your paint is the key. Like, the 2 things, I was talking about this the other day, the difference between bronze and silver level in the MSP open competition is generally brush control. So you can't have anything on the model looking messy. If you manage to pull that off and you've got a solid base coat and at least one layer and highlight, a layer of highlight and shadow each, you're probably going to hit silver. Assuming that your colors, your blends are at least decent. And then from there to silver to gold, it's paint consistency. It's all mastering paint consistency. Good, seriously, that's what you're looking for. Yeah, because you can put on extra paint on your base coat. Like, you are not trying to, like, put a minimum of paint on. You can flood an area with paint when you're base coating. Absolutely. And then it's going to self-level, and it's going to smooth out. And that's why you always want to be working against a wet edge. You never want to be leaving an edge to dry and then going back to it, because as long as it's wet, it's going to join up with your new brush load of paint just fine. So if you move quickly, you can get around the whole model. And a little extra paint like this, like I've got, see this puddling, how I've got it here? Just bring in your brush at the end and kind of take it off. And it's going to be just fine once it dries. Hey, CNOT, thanks for the mega raid. You picked a good day. We're talking about color mixing, and we're also just talking about how to get a smooth base coat on your models and how you can use extra paint, but how you need to thin your paint so that when your brush moves through it, it closes right back up. And what that does is it shows you that the paint is fluid enough that it's self-leveling, and when you put it onto the model with, say, a little bit extra on your brush, it will self-level on your model, and that's how you get super smooth base coats. That's how you get smooth paint. And I have a bunch of this. This is also a video on my YouTube, which is youtube.com/@paintingbig. But yeah, I have a whole foundations, fundamentals of miniature painting series on there, and we talk about one of the videos is smooth base coats. But I put a lot of time into thinking about the why this works, why it happens, why do I paint this way. I found that to be the best way to teach over the years, was to deconstruct what I was doing and figure it out. I didn't like my initial base coat. I was going for a World of Warcraft Night Elf on this one, but this is just so purple and garish, I didn't like it. So I decided to do some mixing and mix my purples with yellow, which is what gives us kind of these guys, and I like this guy better. So we're doing this over the top of my initial purple. When I add white, this should go closer to a normal human skin tone. We should get that kind of purple in the shadows, moderately normal skin tone on the top look. Oh, was he not doing a dragon? Oh, you've got Kuroniko as, like, total number there. She just adores a dragon more than anything. So I'm going to bring in this warm color. Pretty much going to cover up everything except the shadows. I'm going to keep this wild violet color in the shadows, but I want to warm up everything else. And this is a very big model, as you can tell. CNOT fans. This is a Sophie the Succubus, is Reaper's mascot. And I haven't decided whether I'm just going to paint this one as a Druid or as a Sophie. I could leave the wings off and sculpt in the connection points on the back. Pretty easily. Would be a good sculpting exercise for me. But yeah, I haven't decided if I'm going to put her wings on, because the wings are huge. Huge. Oh, and she has a little friend. Wait, let me get the otter. This is concept art was by our Reaper's staff artist, Talon, Izzy. And there's a tiny little otter friend. So she has a little otter familiar carrying potions and supplies. It's adorable. So we're saving the otter for last, because I know I'm going to love it. I try to paint the things. I save the things that I love the most for last, usually. And I try to paint the things that I really detest and get them out of the way early. Usually that means starting with the wings, because I hate wings, but because there's too much of them. However, this time I just knew that I was lost on the skin tone, and I couldn't start the wings without figuring out the skin tone. So essentially, these are actually 3D prints. Yes. The sculpt is by Christine Van Patten, who's the owner and lead sculptor of Moonlight Minis. She does a lot of stuff for her own and for Reaper. Of course, she did this one for Reaper, but this is one of the ones that she did for her own company that I am in the middle of painting, that I've been painting on my own stream on Saturday. Wood Elf Barbarian. She's turning out really well. So they're great models to practice on because even though they're small, they're the 28, 30 millimeter, whatever we call heroic scale these days. They tend to be pretty simple and clean. So if you're looking to get into miniature painting, I think the Moonlight Minis are really good. And some of the Reaper can be good, but you got to look for models that are not overly complicated. So you don't want to start probably with something like Jolie that's got so much little detail. You maybe want to start with something a little simpler, like actually Mr. Bee Warrior. We're working on the bee. He's turning out really cool. I did his wings just this past week. So yeah, I'm highlighting the yellows, as you can tell, and getting the rest of Mr. Bee up to smack. But yeah, so when you're starting, if you consider starting miniature painting, look for simpler, cleaner models without a ton of detail. I mean, you can still have a cool model. The Wood Elf Barbarian is really cool. I've got the Yasmin, the fire Genasi figure that Moonlight did. You don't want to go too crazy with complexity though, because as you develop your brush control, you'll be able to better do that. But you want some easy wins in the beginning. So the simpler, cleaner the sculpt, the less tiny details, the more you can gain confidence in your painting. Start with the Wraith models. CHB. Hey, Slayer. You can start with bigger stuff too, like ogres, giants. Those sometimes still have like detail, but at least they're bigger, so everything else tends to be bigger. So I'm just reinforcing the violet color now. I'm just painting it in shadows, making sure I've still got shadows. All right, so we started. So that's a far cry from where we started, right? We started with this garish purple, and now we're working with something that I like a lot more. So I've decided I do like this, so I think we're going to just work with it. We're just going to keep working it around the model. We'll touch up all the rest of this stuff and get it all working together. I would not advise starting with the Wraith models. Not unless you love undead. Because the other thing you should always think about if you are starting out in the hobby is you definitely want to paint stuff that you like, right? Like, there's no point in forcing yourself to paint stuff that you're not into when you're practicing, because like you're just gonna dislike it, right? This isn't why you joined the hobby. Don't think you have to force yourself to paint something you don't like for practice. I mean, we do often say if you have minis you don't like and you're going to try out a color scheme or something, those are pretty good options then, because then if it sucks and it's the ugliest color scheme you've ever seen, you don't care because someone's on a model you hated. And it usually doesn't take that long to block in some colors together to see if they'll work. But yeah, so don't think you have to paint stuff you don't like when you start. You should be able, there's so many miniatures out there now. You should be able to find something that you like at least like part of. That's a good habit to get into anyway. Like, I knew back in the day, I knew painting prima donnas who would not like touch anything other than a female figure sculpted by Werner Klock. And they wouldn't paint anything else. Like, it's like, whereas and I started out kind of being in that school, being really picky about what I painted. But as I worked as a staff painter for Reaper, I got past that. I realized that, because I had to paint models regularly that I didn't really care about. And what I learned is that there was always some detail or something on every model that I got handed that I could enjoy. There's always something. Like, maybe this is kind of a crappy sculpt, but it has cool musculature, barbarian. Maybe maybe this model's clothes are kind of fudgy, but the face is really good, you know. So I got used to looking at models more as like, what part of this am I excited to paint, you know, instead of just like noping out just because the whole model wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So yeah, when you work for a company, you get over that, or you don't last long. So, and it's funny because then later when I was doing commission work, people would come to me with the models that nobody else would take. Because I didn't care. I was just going to paint it. I wasn't going to whine or say, oh, I'm not really into that, or, you know, I don't know that I can do a really good job on that because blah, blah, blah. You know, they could come to me and go, can you put a coat of paint on this? And I'd be like, sure. And I would enjoy it, too. Painting prima donnas. Oh, they exist. They existed very much in force in the past of the painting hobby. No, Rock. Sometimes I forget to refocus if I'm, like, if it's at the beginning of the stream. But it should be a good focal point. One thing I think that does help is this is a big figure. It's easier for me to stay in the exact focal point when I've got a big figure as opposed to a small one. Because with the small one, I can move a lot. I can move up and down more often, or I'm more prone to it because it's so small. Whereas with this big one, there's definitely like one focal point where I'm comfortable holding it. So that's probably what you're seeing. This camera's been my camera since before I moved out here to the West Coast. So, though I do have my moments where I forget to refocus it at the beginning of the stream, and then I'm like, oh no, we've been blurry for 10 minutes. Right, yeah. Painting for the gaming table is always good practice, right? And maybe you don't like all the models, but then when you get to paint one that you do like, then it's like a treat. So as we move around the model with this skin tone, I'm liking it so much better than this initial skin tone. I am going to put a more solid coat on the hand, though, of the Wild Violet before I go over it. Yeah, she is very big. But I mean, that's kind of why you guys wanted me to paint it. I would have painted the small version. I have the small version. But the party, i.e. the chat, wanted me to paint the big guy, big gal. Because it's not often that we get to paint something this big. And there are differences in what I'm going to be able to do once we get down to textures. But yeah, if you're interested in mixing colors, you probably want to go back and catch the front of this VOD where I talk about mixing the purple and yellow and why some will work and why others don't work as well. Specific purples. And generally mixing complementary colors in general. Why you would do it. What it does for you. The nice thing is these paints are very close together value-wise, so that as far as light and dark, and they're also pretty close together color-wise, all things considered. And so that means that even though my paints are thicker than I would normally want them for layering, I'm able to blend them pretty easily because they're similar. The farther apart you get, the more you have to thin your paint a lot for layering. For blending. Let's get the shoulder here. Yeah. Yeah, when you use the random encounter tables, for sure, having a plethora of funky monsters does help. Plus, you just like painting monsters, Kerniko. Admit it. You like toothy maws and you cannot lie. Two purple worms. Jeez. One purple worm is bad enough. Ooh, I'm so excited. I planted my clover, Dutch white clover and mini clover, and I planted my grass seed in the backyard to try to grow in all the spots that Kiki of the yard that Kiki has turned to mud. And my clovers are starting to sprout. I see their little tiny leaves. I'm very excited. I always love seeing baby plants come up. Ever since I was a kid, I'd love to see that. Yeah, probably he rolls in advance. That makes sense though. Like for me, I mean, yeah, sure there's the excitement of like hitting the party with something crazy and unexpected that even you didn't think of as a GM. But at the same time, I think it's easier to work it into story-wise, or to, you know, reject stuff that doesn't work that well for your campaign if you do the rolls in advance. Doing the rolling is still cool because, like, then you have time to think, oh, okay, well, they're going to run into X. Why would X be out here? Oh, here's how I can work it in, you know? I like having that kind of planning ability. I like my campaigns to be pretty story heavy, so even with the random encounters, I like there to be a reason they're there. Traveling GM, yeah. That makes sense. There's a little bit of imperfection here. I'm gonna grab it with my knife. There. And there's another little one over here. Alrighty. So I was so sore. I went to CrossFit last night, and of course it was squats. And of course I had just done a high intensity workout the night before because I thought I wanted a workout in between my workouts. And that was a squats too, and so I was so sore. So sore this morning, guys. I've decided that doing the high intensity interval training on the days between my CrossFit is not a good idea. So I think I'm going to go for yoga or Pilates instead. Maybe I'll do Pilates tonight. I wasn't able to do Pilates when I first got my first Pilates book. There was no way I could have. My core was just not there. I think my physical therapist was like maybe being overly ambitious about my strength when she suggested Pilates to keep working on my core after my back went out. Because like there were definitely exercises in there I could not physically actually do. But now I can. So maybe I'll try it tonight. Yeah. Well, I was hoping that I could kind of alternate stuff, you know, because I mean the HIIT training is mostly cardio, Laura, but at the same time later on in the exercises, like I'm at the very baby level of the HIIT book that I got, but later on it does include weights, and so yeah, it's probably not going to be a great thing for me to do. So I think it's going to have to be yoga or Pilates. And of the two, I think I really want to get my heart rate up, so I think Pilates is probably better. I know power yoga can be good for that, but Yeah, I think that has BCAAs in it, and I started taking BCAAs in my post-workout drink. I just started it like literally 2 days ago, so hopefully, seriously, that'll help. It shouldn't be too bad, except that it was like sprints and squats, and my legs were like, eh. And then I went into like squat press yesterday. I did hit a new high weight on my squat press, however, 65 pounds. I'm working everything up to 100. Like, I want to get to 100 on everything. But I want my, yeah. Yeah, for sure, Cornico. As I'm learning. See, and the sprints and the squats shouldn't have been, like, really muscle, because, right, I wasn't using any weights. So it was just body weight. But the fact is that I still weigh enough. I'm still overweight enough that even my body weight is weights. I have to remember that sometimes. I'm like, sprinting when you're 180 pounds is probably still pretty trying on your muscles when you're not used to ever doing sprinting. Yeah, and I never know what I'm working on at CrossFit. Although there's a little bit of knowing because we, at least with the weight training, because we do cycles. So like we just finished out, that last night was our last squat press cycle. So... But yeah, part of the reason I like CrossFit is that I just walk in and it's something different every day. And I never want to look up the workout in advance. I just want to go in cold. Because I don't want to like see a workout that I really detest and then want to go home. All right, so that's fingers. More fingers. So fingers, highlighting skin. There. Aha. Yeah, sprinting is hard. It is. I was only doing 20-second sprints, but wow. Because I really want to get my endurance up so that I can actually do the 400-meter run at CrossFit. Like right now I'm just doing 200 meters to 250 depending on how much energy I have for the day. But I want to get to the point where I can do the 400 comfortably. I want to get to the point where I can do everything in CrossFit like comfortably at some level, even if it's scaled. But I would like to be able to do that run. Hey, Miniatures Den. Wham! We got 2 giant raids today. So Packas, what we're doing is, instead of my terrible purple skin tone I started with, we are building a much rosier, more interesting skin tone on top of it by mixing yellow into one of our purples. And I did that right at the beginning of stream. So we're keeping our wild violet in the shadows, but we're using this color, which is actually runic purple, a little bit more of a red purple, but very similar to this color, mixed with a yellow. So we're mixing complementary colors, candlelight yellow in this case. And that's what, plus white, what this creates. So we're using that, we're blocking that in, and then we're going to start mixing a highlight color. I need to get the skin figured out before I start doing, like, my normal starting point is the wings. Because I usually make the inner membranes of the wings skin colored. So it's totally is Moonlight. It's totally is. Oh, glad you're here. Yes, I'm going for World of Warcraft Night Elf Honor Moonlight. But this was too purple. Much as it matched the picture I found, it was too purple. So I'm going to bring her up a little bit more fleshy, but keep the purple in the shadows. Yeah. I mean, even if I put wings on her, I could still go wow, Night Elf. I just want to do something different, right? And the purple will go fine with the green for the vegetation. Yeah, candlelight yellow is it's a great color. So yeah, so what we're doing right now, and I'm going to bring in my brown liner and do some lining real quick too. I already lined around the face, but I didn't line around the rest of. And you can see the difference. Like when you look around the face and the skin, how much tighter it looks because I've done that line. Makes a huge difference. Whereas over here, everything is just kind of like looks messy, right? When you put that lining in, it neatens everything up. So if you are at bronze and you are trying to get to silver at Reapercon, for example, practice your lining. It's not a necessary technique, and if you don't like lining, there are other ways you can get that tight contrast by like using dark and light colors next to each other. Like if I wanted the blue-black on her hair, I wouldn't have had to line around the face because that blue-black would frame the model. in that area. But then you've got to be good at alternating your lights and shadows everywhere, and you also got to be good at shading to get that definition. So like, let's say I went with a light colored fur on these cuffs, which I very much might. If I was not using lining, I would then be reaching for a very dark purple to shade around the fingers and everything, and between the fingers, and I'd be using that dark purple shading right up against that cuff because I know the cuff will be a light color. So if you don't want to line, then you can do targeted shading instead. I like lining. I think it's a very efficient way to get that elemental level of shading in. And it also builds brush control like no other technique. It's going to be paint consistency, Valthorn. It's going to be paint consistency. Because in order to get like the blends or the textures or whatever style thing you are trying to do, you need to like master the exact right paint consistency for that. So thinning your paint and essentially learning the proper thinning to the proper technique. I mean, if you've got the brush control, then it's all of it is just consistency at that point, with some color, maybe some color work if you really aren't very good at color. But if you look at gold level minis, I mean, they're just like, at Reapercon, this is a gold level mini. So it's neat and tight, and the brush control is there. The blending is also there, right? I could get a little better on some of the blending. The face is good. The details are all present, and you can see them. I'm doing small amounts of texture. It doesn't matter if you use metallics or NMM, but they should look good. So this is a gold level paint job at Reapercon. It may not be a gold level paint job at some of the other bigger venues. Like it definitely wouldn't be a gold level paint job at Monte San Savino. But there are other factors that they're taking. So it depends also on where you're going to compete. Nova Open or Las Vegas Open is another competition that's very, very high end that you have to be very good to nail a gold in. And you'll find that. Like, Reapercon is one of the more forgiving competitions, so if you're looking to start your journey to being a high-level competition painter, it's a very forgiving venue to start it at. And gold at Reapercon is like probably a silver in other high-level venues. And it really depends, though. Different venues are looking for different things. So studying the competition and looking at what won last year, always a good idea. Like, okay, because like, of course, winning gold at Reapercon is one thing. Winning best at show at Reapercon is another. So winning a best in show at Reapercon is pretty much a gold level model in any other competition for the most part. Let me grab David's best in show winning model for those who haven't seen it to give you an idea. 1 second. All right, so this model would win gold in any painting venue across the world, period, except Golden Demon, because it's not a GW model. So this is the high end of gold. Yeah, it's Swifty. David decided he had to, like, chain listen to Taylor Swift for months. So the things that are going on here are a great lighting effect. Look at the hard shadow under her chin. Like, you can see that the light is coming at her from the side because you can see that hard shadow. That's painted on, folks. That's not just cast by the light. See it? But it's absolutely realistic, right? He's got denim texture. He's got amazing freehand, which is the Eras concert t-shirt, by the way. He's even done the Lagunitas beer bottle art, convincingly enough for it to be recognized. He's got his buttons, and he's done the back end shadow, but you can still see the texture. This is the key here. if you're going to do a model that's got a bright frontal light, you can go a lot less on the back. And you think that, you know, you look at it and you're like, oh, all the work is on the front of this piece. But when you get close, you realize that's not true at all. There's still a lot of texture work being done on the back of this jacket. And again, can see the light that he's brought back on the back part of this is like absolutely... golly Crowley, or Dog Father. It was months. You know, probably, I want to say 75 hours-ish, 80. If I did this model, it'd be a 75 to 80 hour model, I think. Because he spent a long time, but it's hard to tell, right? Because we paint in the evenings, we don't track our time. Some nights he would spend 3 or 4, on the weekend he might spend 5 or 6 hours a day on with this model. But during the week, maybe he'd spend a couple hours a night. And so, you know, at least for a couple months. Yeah, of course he just passed it around the class. Anything we paint, we can fix. That's one of the things that, like, I think you want to just, like, get in your head earlier. Like, I've always been like that. Like, some of my clients, when I was doing commission work, like, they would use my models for gaming. And when people found that out, they were just like, oh my God, why would you let them do that? And I'm like, dude, anything they break, I can fix. It's not... It's sure, it's a pain in the butt to have to repaint something. And sure, there are breakages that, like, you know, shatter the model beyond being able to be fixed. But those are pretty rare. And, you know, like, handing it around a class, what's the worst you're going to do? You're going to drop it on the table a little bit. Maybe it gets a little bit, you know, loose on its podium, or you chip a tiny bit. That's easy to touch up. Thanks for answering that question, Derek. Yeah, that's the thing about the why the MSP Open, why the Reapers competition is a very good place to start. Is, yeah, you're competing against the standard. You're not competing against. Now the standard is going to change depending on different judges, and you can never let it, like, totally, like, don't let it define you. I would say, like, if you get a bronze, like, do ask your judges what you could have done to get silver. But in general, just like I said, it's going to be neatness that gets you from bronze to silver. If your model looks messy, then that's gonna detract, right? So you want to get your definition of each part on point, have a nice solid base coat, work on your contrasting colors, right? If you alternate from dark to mid to light and stuff like that, you can essentially create, just like I was talking about on her hand, is you can create that separation without lining. Did David line on this? 1 second. We're going to totally get down and dirty on this mini. 1 second. He doesn't line a lot. David is one who does natural shading. So here, you can see there is a line. Right? He probably lined in here. But he also faded it in. You can still see that demarcation. But he didn't line back here. Instead, he went for the shadow. You see, this is the technique I'm talking about. If you don't want to line, especially on these bigger models like busts, sometimes it won't look correct. But if you don't want to line, you've got to nail these shadows that he's painted in. Got to nail those shadows. Like, that shadow there defines the jawline and the hair. He did line here. Around the t-shirt, see it? So there are areas where he did line. Lined here on the beer bottle top. But there are other places that he chose to just make it more natural, right? Yeah, David's so good at those. Like, he's so good. Like, everybody in the world, like, can learn from him on that one, except for, like, the super amazing people like Kirill, the god painter. But yeah, like, the warm saturation, because it's next to her hair. This is the thing that light does, guys. If it bounces off of a warm thing, it's going to give you a warm shadow instead of a cool shadow. That's what's happening with the skin tone here. Yeah, but, like, I wonder if I have a work in progress I don't think so. Sadly, I don't have something that I would call silver, solid silver. What I think I might do this year at Reapercon, because I'm going to be there, is I'm going to, let me put Swifty up in a safe place here. Stay, Swifty, stay. All right. Is I'm gonna, after the competition, I'm gonna take a set of pictures of like a few of the golds, a few of the solid silvers, and a few bronzes, so that we can break this down and show you guys afterwards. Yeah, and like I say, it's not a perfect competition. No competition is perfect. We try to be objective, but some judges are just harder than others, and some judges like are easier than others, and it's just the way it goes. So, but in general, the way to get like to silver is in my mind is brush control, neatness, and probably some color choice. Just because when, like I said, when you alternate your darks and lights and you alternate warm and cool, you can get that feeling of neatness without having to be great at lining. But yeah, if something looks messy, it's usually a bronze for me. If it's tight and neat and it's got highlighting and shading, it usually goes to silver. That's just me, though. Like, Derek also judges, and he may have different criteria. We are all looking at painting quality, but painting quality between judges is different. All right. And, you know, it's okay to disagree with the judges. And if you disagree with the judges and you felt your model was a silver and they rated you a bronze, the best thing you can do is just to get better. Like, if you really disagree and you feel like you were really shafted, go to a different competition. And see if that bears you out. Because sometimes judges are biased one way or another at a given competition. But also remember, the judges are judging hundreds of models. We're all there very late. We've had a full day at the convention when we're doing it. Give us a little bit of leeway. We get a little slap happy sometimes, and we have to like refocus. I try really hard to stay focused through the whole thing. My team usually has a pretty business-like attitude, and we agree about what our thresholds are. So, no, Bryce, no, not unless you really want to get somebody challenging you to a wrestling match. So we've got a couple of judges in the chat, guys. So this is the thing. DKS and B Kokonar are also judges, so you have 3 of us here. Right. And there's a fine line, like, because sometimes you find yourself as a judge, you find yourself sliding into nitpick territory, and we try to keep out of the nitpick territory too. We only usually end up picking the nits when something is really on the border between like bronze and silver or silver and gold, right? And then we really focus down because we want to make a good decision. But yeah, and then again, remember, it's also a team of judges, so it's not just one person making the call. It's 3 people. But yeah. But really, like the best thing is paint something you enjoy. Try to make it as good as you can. If you get like a silver or a gold or a certificate, it doesn't matter. Just your best question for anybody is, what is the next thing I need to do, not to win silver necessarily or to win gold, but to get better. If you think of it, I think it's maybe for me a little more constructive to think of it that way. Because I guess in my progression, and you know I'm progressing on a lot of things right now, I'm still trying to be a better painter. I'm still, I'm progressing on my fitness journey. I'm progressing on my knitting. All these things. I've really learned that if I just keep working at it and making incremental improvements, I will get there. Like, I've just got that mental that I will get there. I just need to be improving. I need to keep improving, right? And that can be challenging, is finding the people to tell you who are going to be honest and who are going to actually have the knowledge base to know what you should do to improve, right? Yep. Yeah, and sometimes would you use water or oh, water. Yeah, that's exactly what you do, Sakura. These are all thinned with water. I just have I have my water in a dropper bottle with a little bit of extra flow improver in it. So that's why I'm using that to thin. But yeah, never ever use solvents to thin water-based paint. It's water-based for a reason. And if you're working with oils, use turpentine or mineral spirits. However, if you are working with water-soluble oil paint, Winsor & Newton Artisan line, I'm looking at you because I love you, then you can use water to thin your oil paints, which is hugely counterintuitive and will make your brain do like little what? Spasms. Yeah, difference between low and high gold is different. Yep. Yes, and you know, sometimes though, if you're trying to build your confidence, guys, like if you find that you're down on yourself a lot about your painting, Reaper's community can be the best thing. Because then you need cheerleaders. You don't need somebody who's going to rip your model apart. You need people who are going to like say the ways that your model is great, and then if you ask them, say, okay guys, what's one thing I could be a little better on? They will usually tell you if you ask that, in my experience. Like, some people will be honest with you. Like, if somebody is at a painting level that's at yours or lower, they probably won't be able to see how you should improve. But if they're, you know, at or above your painting level, they probably can. And even if, this is the thing, right? Our eye and our comprehension increases ahead of our ability. So just because somebody is at or even a tiny bit below where you are, as far as you think, doesn't mean that their eye isn't really good or their understanding of what they need to do next or what you need to do next isn't there. And this is why it's so fraught, right? Is because our eye always improves. Ira Glass talks about this in his great speech, and like, I'm not going to read that, but I want to read it, but I won't. But Ira Glass, I can look it up. But anyway, I'll look it up in a second. Best motivational thing ever for creatives. So he talks about the fact that the biggest discouraging factor that makes people quit is the fact that their eye gets bigger and gets better. They can see, like, you know, the differences. They see what's good. They understand, you know, oh, this is where I want to be. But their ability is lagging behind because it takes time for your ability to catch up to your eye. So maybe you look at my stuff and you're like, I see what she's doing there. But then when you try to do it yourself, you struggle. And it's not because you aren't awesome. It's because your ability is going to lag behind your eye and your comprehension. Okay? Cornico, yeah. Let me look up. Hold on. I was going to look up and see if I could find that Ira Glass speech because I love it so much and I want to give you guys at least... Yes. Got it. So... Okay, it's about the gap. So I'm going to read this to y'all. You're going to sit here and have it. You're going to sit here and take it. That does happen, Dogfather. Like, but you know what? Ask yourself if that isn't enough. Like, isn't it enough that you really like the work you're doing? Right? Sometimes that can be enough. It depends on how competitive you are, right? That's where the competition comes in. So, okay, Ira Glass is a creative. He's a writer. But this applies to all of you as well. And we're going to read it because it's awesome. Quote, "Nobody tells this to people who are beginners, but I wish someone had told me. All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. But there's the gap. For the first couple of years, you make stuff, and it's just not that good. It's trying to be good. It has potential, but it's not. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still killer. And so your taste is why your work disappoints you. A lot of people never get past this phase. They quit. Most people I know who do interesting creative work went through years of this. We know our work doesn't have this special thing that we want it to have. We all go through this. And if you are just starting out or you are still in this phase, you gotta know it's normal, and the most important thing you can do is do a lot of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week you finish one story or model. It's only by going through a volume of work that you will close that gap, and your work will be as good as your ambitions. And I took longer to figure this out, how to do this, than anyone I've ever met. It's going to take a while. It's normal to take a while. You've just got to fight your way through. One of the best all-time creative go get it speeches ever written by that man. And it's true. And if deadlines don't work for you because they don't work for some people, the mental pressure is too much, then just paint steadily. The only way to get better and to close that gap between your taste, your eye, and your comprehension, and your ability is to just paint. Just paint. Enjoy it. Yeah. I need it just written in huge letters on the side of wherever I teach. Yep. The Gap by Ira Glass. Yep. On Vimeo. Yeah, the Vimeo read is pretty good. Yeah, the text is available and quotable, which is where I just got it, you know. Yeah. Your favorite human is the worst painter in the world. They can put a permanent bend in the best brush, but by gosh, they can tell me what's wrong with the paint job. Right? Oh, you just missed my awesome, read of the most inspirational, painting speech or creative speech ever, Play in the Mud. But we're going to repeat, we're not going to read it again, but we're just going to say, if you feel like you're struggling in your hobby and you need inspiration, any creative hobby, doesn't matter, go and look up Ira Glass, so I-R-A, and then glass, like picking up a glass of water, and what the quote you're looking for is called The Gap. Best ever. I periodically read it, probably every 6 months, I want to say. I read it on this stream. But you can go look it up. It's on the Googles. You can find a video of them reading it. You can find, just look on Quotable. I think it's got the whole thing. Thank you for the raid, Play in the Mud. But yeah, it is a great quote about why we struggle and yet why it's, why the process is there and that it's normal and it's okay and all you need to do is keep going. So, because we all get into this, because we have great taste. We look at a model like David's that I showed earlier. I guess I can show for the muddies. Hey, Play in the Mud people, hold on. Let me grab it. My husband is an awesome painter and just an awesome guy, but he won Best in Show at Reapercon painting competition this past year, and so I was showing his Taylor Swift concert goer earlier. This is painted at probably, I don't know how many hours. I guess I guessed 75 to 80. But it's an amazing model. But the point is that people, a lot of us get into miniature painting because we fall in love. We see an amazing miniature and we're just like, oh my God. Right? And it just takes over our head. And we want to do that, right? Stay, Swifty, stay. And we've got to remember that even though it's hard, even though our work doesn't have that something, and maybe it looks like outright crap to us sometimes, if we just need to keep going, because it takes a while. It'll take a while for our actual ability to catch up with our eye, with our comprehension, with our taste, as Ira puts it. And to just not lose hope. Yeah, you just sit down and paint for a bit every night. Yep. And that's why that's why you're getting better, Loris. Yeah, mini painting is a great family hobby. When I used to do paint club, there was a guy who brought in his daughters, and he started out bringing just one in, and then he also had twin girls who were younger. So at one point, right before I moved, he was bringing in his, I think she was 9 at that point, and then his 2 5-year-olds. And everybody would paint together, at least as far as their attention spans allowed. So I'm just going to line because, again, I could shade, but I'm going to line. And this is just a stylistic choice. Like, you just got to ask yourself, like, what do I want to do? And lining is easier to learn straight up. It's easier to learn in the beginning because it's just a simple line. And it, like I said, it helps build your brush control, which is really valuable when you're painting little guys. Anything that helps you, it also helps with paint consistency, right? Because you have to nail that paint consistency to get the line be solid enough, dark enough, but also have the paint be fluid enough to do a nice thin line. And if you don't like the lined look, but you want the shadow and you want the brush control, you can consider lining and then doing some additional shading to hide the lining. So it's not, so it doesn't look quite so pen and ink. Well, one thing you could do, Hyper, is to try the thing that you're thinking of on a different model. Or on a piece of paper. You can, remember, you could take a black and white photo of any model under strong light, just print it out and just paint on the paper. Just to experiment, just to see if you can, like, execute. I've done that. Right. Yeah, or you can just go for it on the model and just try as hard as you can and, you know, maybe you'll get there, maybe you won't, but at least you'll have learned. And as long as you can end at a point where you are reasonably satisfied with what you've learned, you can call it there. But yeah, for whoever mentioned, Dogfather, who mentioned like that they were happy with their work, but then other people didn't seem to be, like, that just, it's probably best then to just paint for yourself for a while. And it doesn't mean you can't keep trying to improve, right? But if it doesn't mean anything to you, like if you're enjoying your hobby and you don't really feel the need to get better because you're happy with your work as it is, like, be there. Like, I mean, that's my ex-husband. That pretty much is, and that's fine. Like, that's a perfectly good relationship. We talk about competitions and getting better on this stream a lot, but that's because that's the way that I'm wired. But I understand that not everybody is wired like that, and not everybody is going to be rewarded by that, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, you do not have to be competitive or always seeking self-improvement. Like, I am a crazy self-improvement hound, guys. It's one of the things that makes me happiest in life, is to actually improve myself. And that is not everybody. So, and I've been wired that way since I was a kid. So, but many of you aren't, and it's okay. It's great that you're not wired that way. Please don't give us an entire world of me. And honestly, if you're happy with your work, be happy with your work. And then if a time comes when you're like, well, you know, maybe I could try some things, then try some things. But there's a lot of social pressure sometimes in a creative hobby to, you know, to win a thing, to enter a thing, to, you know, to put your work up against other people's, to compare. There's a lot of things like that. You do not need to buy into those things. Those things are not necessary. Those things can be truly toxic to some people. And if that is the case for you, please don't stop painting, but do stop doing those things. Take a break from those things and see if your happiness rating goes up. Yeah. Points for difficulty. Choose a model that's more complicated or multiple materials, freehand, yada yada. Yeah, that can push it to gold, to a better gold. Yeah, no mismold lines. We talked about that when I talked about my critter that I'm prepping for Golden Demon. How I was taking hours to do green work and to remove all flaws. That model is probably going to have 7 or 8 hours of prep on it just for the beast. I haven't even gotten to the guy riding it yet. So yes, prep is important in miniature painting competitions. Hey there, blacksmith. Hello. And now I can work clerk here. Yes! Oh, blacksmithing, awesome! Okay, you're gonna laugh at me, but my husband and I totally are addicted to watching Forged in Fire from the History Channel. We watch it every night that we have time before we go to sleep. We watch it in bed. So I'm totally a nerd for that. Like, I think I would probably melt myself with an acetylene torch or a forge, but, like, I'll stay far away from that. But all the props, man, that is some serious stuff. I love it. And I love knives and swords, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's nice to meet you. Like, metalworking is serious stuff. I took one metalworking class in college. Was happy that I managed to not burn myself severely while I was in it. I was so afraid of fire. But I so admire people who do that stuff. Paint not leaving much behind on each stroke, or it'll leave behind. Okay. Balthorn, you have given me a specific thing. A specific thing. This is okay. If your paint is not leaving much behind on each stroke, if it's not actually coming off the brush, then you need more water. If it is coming off the brush, but you're just not seeing much color, then you need to strengthen your paint just a little. It depends on what you're doing, but if you're doing textures, then you do need to strengthen your paint. You need to be able to actually see it. But you still need it thinned because you need it to make those fine strokes. But I think what you're talking about is really, it's just that fine line between too watery and not watery enough. Because if it doesn't want to come off the brush, if it's not leaving much behind because it doesn't want to come off the brush, that is absolutely a thinning thing. Add a tiny bit of water. Add water until you can get there. But be careful about the amount of water you add, right? And if you're working on a wet palette, this can really be frustrating because on that wet palette, the water is going to be constantly wicking up and down. It's going to be going up into the paint. It's going to wick down off the surface. Keeping a consistent paint consistency, dear, I can't believe I did that, with a wet palette is a challenge. And this is why I recommend using both palettes until you master paint consistency. Because when you've got the well palette, you are able to control the paint. You need to build a deep enough puddle. Remember, you always need to use at least 6 to 10 drops of paint. 8 is the sweet spot. Paint and water, sorry. So if you're going to mix like 2 to 1, paint to water, so you put 4 drops of paint and 2 drops of water, that's your minimum. And then anything beyond that will just help to make a deeper puddle, which keeps your paint at the right consistency for longer. But it helps you to dial it in without that wet palette sucking water out of your paint or putting more water in your paint. It's really, really difficult to master paint consistency on a wet palette. You can do it, and after you finally figure it out with, like, when you've got a gut instinct for it, when you've internalized it, as I have, I can use a wet palette. But I don't enjoy it because I constantly have to be watching my paint consistency. Bye, Crowley. That was my thought too, Bryce. And then I was like, think about all of the pieces of metal I'd have lying around that were failed attempts. And I'm like, okay, I don't have a big enough yard for this. Oh, cool. Oh, Jay Nielsen. Oh, I love Jay. That's so funny, Magnetic Gumby. Okay, I'm glad we've got some Forged in Fire fans here. Hi, guys. I see you. Those guys are so funny. Like, I like Ben Abbott, too. Okay. Yeah, sure. Twist. Sure. If you enter something into the 90-day challenge, can it be re-entered at Reapercon? Sure. The only thing that bars a model from being entered into Reapercon is that it has been previously entered into Reapercon. It's the only thing. And technically, if you took a model you'd entered into Reapercon and you converted it significantly and built a new base for it or something like that, if you did a lot of work and it's a totally different mini, you could re-enter it. That's kind of a fine line, but... Yeah, I burned myself enough in the kitchen, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, a lot of visibility to the craft, for sure. Yeah, that's cool. One-to-one mixed with a mid-tone color, so that's your base coat? Or your, that's texture. I find that textures, I usually want to be going with a slightly lighter color. One-to-one is layering, I would say, for mid color, not, so it's going to be very translucent. So if you're trying to do textures, okay, so let me explain. Let me talk about that a little bit there, Valthorn. Hold on, let me get the chat scrolled down so that I'm not sure. So I'm sure. Same dry palette. Okay. New house then. Yeah, right. Not happening. Maybe someday we'll get a ski chalet in Tahoe, Bryce. We'll be able to come over and see you more often. I keep joking and poking David about that. I'm like, if we just paid off this house, you could buy a second house in Tahoe. Lunchtime. Bye, Shadow Raven. So okay. So are you talking about textures or are you talking about layering? Like, give me an example, Valthorn, of what exactly you're trying. Which little printer spots? Do I have little printer spots on here? I don't think we've got any printer spots on here. A lot of this is my Speckly primer because I did a Super Hurry primer. I don't see any. I guess I got a little bit. Usually I run into the little printer things before I actually paint the area, so I just scrape them off. But some of this is not actually printer things. It's actually, the speckles are actually primer, because I did a very hurried primer with a very low can. But yeah, if I see the little nubbins, I'm going to take them off. I didn't see any pits. This looked pretty pristine. And the wings go in here. So I don't need to worry about removing anything in here. So overall, and if you see any speckles, I don't see any pitting. If those little divots, I do actually fill them with green stuff usually. Oh yeah, it's just a primer. Yeah, Carrie. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, me and fire don't mix. That's definitely my opposing element. But yeah, Val, if you can tell me exactly what you're trying to do, because I'm kind of like confused a little bit now because you mentioned gnome flesh. I'm curious as to whether you're trying to do texture or you're trying to do layering and blending. I got a little bit of confused in there. Because a 1-to-1 mix with a mid color is good for layering, usually. And if you've got like too much, if you've got a lot of paint on your brush and it's giving you puddling or inconsistency, then remove the paint from your brush. You actually don't want to have a lot of paint on your brush for either for layering or for textures, actually. You shouldn't have a lot of paint on the brush. If your paint is thinned enough, then the danger is that you're going to get a lot of puddles or paint that you can't really control or inconsistent coverage. And so doing a little lining around the shoulder here just because I like the way it looks. You can see that my paint isn't super dark. Yeah, every time we watch Force and Fire, I think about it, and then I'm like, nope. But yeah, Val, if you can respond in the next couple minutes, I can try to help you before the stream ends. Because usually if you describe what you're trying to do, with what paint at what consistency, I can tell you what's the deal. Because I know MSP well enough. I'm just gonna, and if I make a blorf like that, it doesn't matter. I haven't painted this at all, so I'm not even gonna fix it. It's not worth fixing. Yep, you're just seeing my speckly primer. Yep. So the lining just helps to crisp everything up. I'll get my paint, and again, I'm gonna have to grab her card. And do I have a card for Sophie? I guess I didn't, because the Wild Violet was easy to remember. But I will grab a new card for her and write down. I'll swatch out this color. Okay. Base coating model with a 1 to 4 or 4 to 1 gnome flesh water. It took about 4 or 5 passes to get a solid coat. That's really odd. Are you shaking your paint? We did talk about the paint shakeage. Let me see what my gnome flesh does. I've got it right here. All right. Shake, 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 shake. And you said 4 to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 drops of gnome flesh. 1 drop of water. Bloop. It's a pretty big drop of water too. Mix it up. And I'm going to just try it on the bottom of the base here. Okay, so when I mix it up, it looks like this. When I dab it out onto the palette, I can see that it's thick and has coverage. If you are at 4 to 1 paint to water, so 4 drops of paint, 1 drop of water, and you are not getting this coverage with gnome flesh, I would actually I would shake it. I would stir it, because we know that a lot of your paint's been sitting around a while. Oh, that's true. If you're painting over black primer, you could have a problem. Okay, so 2 to 1, when you're doing the chestnut brown gnome flesh, you were shading with it, I assume? When you're shading, you do want terrible coverage. But, because you want it to be translucent. But like this is a 4 to 1. That's the way it is. Use a softer brush too. Remember that if you're using Taklons, it can actually cause more brush strokes. This is a sable. So I will need 2 coats to cover. The initial base kept leaving a little gap, so it was beading up. That says to me that it is not fully in solution. You have a paint that is mostly spitting out binder, and it is not, because I assume were you painting over black? Yeah, okay. So that says to me that that paint is still partially out of solution. Open the top, stick a stir stick, or the end of a brush in my case, into there. Stir it around, then put it on your vortex mixer or shake it. But that's that lack of coverage with a paint when it's beading and over primer. Although there's some black primers that can be kind of annoying. But black is going to be a heck of a lot harder to cover. Like, honestly, Valthorn, if I was putting gnome flesh over black, I would put down a coat of white first and then put the gnome flesh over the top. That said, if your paint does not look like mine, if you can, like, paint it over your palette and it's not giving you as much coverage as it's giving me here, then your paint is at issue. Your paint's the issue, not your technique. Yeah, but black primer with bones, you have to wash them, I say. So hot soapy water to get any mold release and stuff off. But yeah, so if you mix up just like not after the stream, just mix up 4 drops of your gnome. See if it looks like this. See if it's solid. It should be a solid color at 4 to 1. You might see a little translucency like you see right here. But that's the most you're going to see at 4 to 1. If you see anything less than this, your paint needs to be put back in solution. Needs to shake. Shake, shake, shake. Lots of shaking. Much shaking. And chestnut brown has great coverage, so if it's not covering, something's wrong. Although you are mixing, a fair bit with water in there. But it sounds like you're also since you were using the gnome flesh, which was already compromised, that may have contributed. But I know you mentioned that your paints have been sitting for a long time, so it's going to be annoying. But I honestly probably would take a stir stick to every one of those before I started even shaking it. I would stir it up, make sure that I'm kind of scraping along the bottom to get all the resins and pigments and everything off the bottom, matting agent, and then I would shake it. And then I would compare. So what you might want to do if you really want to troubleshoot this, Val, is 4 drops of your current gnome flesh, no extra work, in the palette. Do what I just did, dab it on the side, see what it looks like. Then pop the top off, stir it up, shake it like a bejeebus. Try it again, see if you see a difference. If you do, then you know that you have the solution. Yeah, I'll get to the Discord. Today is usually my Discord day, is Wednesday. I'll go look. So anyway, that's what you should see. If you don't see that, and again, over black primer, any lighter skin tone, and I would count this as a lighter skin tone, I would put down a coat of white first. It's just going to make your journey so much easier. Black primer is a devil. Like, if you're using dark colors, then it can help make everything look that kind of gloomy way. But when you put anything mid to light on it, especially skin tones, you're fighting. You're going to fight, and it's going to take a lot of coats. You might try zenith priming. That'll let you keep your black in the shadows, but it will also give you a layer of white over the top and some of the raised areas. Oh yeah, crochet hooks would be great for stirring paint. That's a good idea. I have some throwaway ones of those. That's a good one. Paint stirrer. There we go. Strategies for stuff. Anyway, try those things, Val. It's always good to get a comparison with the paint that you haven't done that to. So take your gnome flesh and, like I said, do that. Put it in the palette, thin it, and look at it just the way I did, kind of brushing it up onto the top areas of the palette, and see what your coverage looks like. And then stir it and shake it, and then do a comparison one right next to it and see if there's a difference. If there's no difference, then you know the paint isn't the problem, right? And that helps us eliminate potential problems. So there we go. Yeah, you have fun, Turgeon. I'll see you. I've been writing every day. I've been good. Which end did you use? Either end probably would work. I don't know if I would use the... Yeah, but if it's really compressed, the mixer is not a super... Like, I shook that lemon yellow that I talked about the other day. I shook that sucker like crazy, as hard as I could, for a minute. And I had to stir it up. I had to stir it up to get it to work. So, I don't know. I don't put split shot in my paint. I put agitators in my paint. I stand by. Okay, Val, so here's the deal. This test will tell you, right? Take your paint, before you stir it, do this, and tell me, next stream or whatever, tell me if it's opaque like this or if it's not. If it's not, then we know there's a problem with the paint. Next thing to do is to stick a stir stick in there and stir that bugger up and then put it back on that mixer for another minute. Try it again. If it's still screwed up, then the only other thing I can think of... 2 p.m. I wondered why we weren't having a Lurky Luca. I just realized that was that day. So anyway, but this is our we have to do scientific method, Val, because I'm not there with you, so I can't just test your paint. But if it still has problems, then I kind of wonder if it got, frozen in transit or something. Lol, Bryce, lol. But yeah, so, testing it will tell you, Val, if it looks like mine or if it doesn't look like mine. And if it still has problems, hello, are you ready? Oh, Kundi. All right, well, let's call it there. But yeah, just do a test for me, Val, and let me know. Because if it looks like that, but you're still having trouble, then it's probably not the paint. It might be trying to go over the black primer, because those lighter colors do have problems with that. But I mean, like I said, we just have to do a process of elimination and try to figure it out. I'm willing to work with you to try to figure it out. I can't be right next to you, so like if you mailed me that bottle, I'd tell you, but that would just take time. Iris thing. Like if you have never used that color before, and I would probably test the chestnut brown separately. Yes. Yeah. All right. So anyway, if it is the paint, then you can essentially, I don't know, it's been a while since your order, but I mean, normally if there's a bad paint, like Reaper will replace it. But I'm not, like, I can't be sure. You can always, like, send Reaper a picture, ask them if they'll replace the paint. You can always do that. Like in the well, you mean? Like starts to separate? And is it true of every color? Hey, Mad, we're just turning it down. I'm just trying to help Val. So if it's separating with just one drop of water in it, something's wrong with the paint. Hey there. Hey, so we just actually stopped the stream. We're just gonna close up the stream. But yeah, we're on here every time this morning. I guess it's still morning for me, not for both of you. But I started about 2 hours ago, Hetchy, and so if you come back tomorrow, we'll work on various stuff. I do paint fairly high level, but right now we're starting a lot of new projects, so it's just working on her skin tones today. Tomorrow, everybody, however, we'll be working on Ms. Jolie. We have just a little bit left on her. Tiny bit left on her. We have to do her eyes, we have to do her book. I think, and I wanted to work on the reds a bit. Yeah, doggo walking is super important. I'm amazed that mine isn't sitting here staring at me. So we'll be working on this tomorrow. And maybe starting a new model if I get done. I need to dig up a new model. Thank you, everybody. Sorry we went late. But yeah, do what you can, Val. If all your paint does that, it might be bad. I don't think that you can really... I always say you can't really ask Reaper to replace paint if it's just been that you left it sitting around forever. But if like you haven't ever used it and it's only been sitting for a year, I mean, you could try to ask them to replace some of it. I don't know if they will because it's been a long time. Yeah. Might just walk him in the hallway. Oh, Kiki, that's not a walk, is it? That's not a proper walk. Yes. Yes, don't let... I like mimics. We need more mimics. More mimics. More mimics. Anyway. Thank you, everybody. Sorry to derail the stream and go all over the place today. We didn't actually get much painting left or done. I have to actually stop and make a card for Sophie so I remember what her painting scheme is. But do come back tomorrow, and I promise you we'll be ourselves. That's all I can promise you. All right. Thank you, Quindy. Thank you for attempting to wrangle a Luca that was non-existent. And I hope your day is good. Alrighty? See you tomorrow, everybody.